So one of the most common questions we're going to get when we start the game on June 2nd is, how do I level up as fast as possible to reach that max level of 60 and start leveling up my Paragon level up to a maximum of 500? There's a lot of classes here, and some are better than others. I've already gone over sort of what classes are going to be the best for solo play, but in terms of leveling up as quick as possible, there's a different criteria, as well as we're assuming that we're going to be playing in group play here, so some classes are going to be a lot better for different reasons. Let's jump into it. So we're going to start off with a Barbarian here, and let's jump into some of the criteria for the efficient leveling from 1 to 60, and then after that, the Paragon levels in general, although that's sort of a different topic in terms of fastest progression. But when we're talking about party composition, there's usually an optimal party composition, at least so far, sort of the meta. And if you've not seen my previous video, that's going to contain a Barbarian, a Crusader, a Demon Hunter, and then a flex spot, generally going to be filled with a second Demon Hunter. If you're talking about pure speed through PvE content, it's probably going to be a Demon Hunter or perhaps a Wizard, simply for their super high single target damage. Why are we bringing in the Barbarian? Well, there's really two reasons, and I've mentioned this quite a few times, but the Demoralize here, it's going to give you a whole team-wide party damage buff, and then the Sprint here, it's going to give you the massive AoE speed buff. And I wanted to talk about these and then jump into the criteria. So when we're talking about the speed at which we're leveling as fast as possible, there's really a few things we need to think about. First, how quickly can we actually run through the dungeons, whether that's going to be actually running, for example, with this sprint buff right here, or if it's movement speed abilities such as the Wizard's Teleport or the Demon Hunter's Daring Swing. Are those going to be allowing us to run through the actual map distance quickly? Because that is going to be the major bottleneck in terms of clearing out content. That, and one other thing which I'll go over in just a moment, we actually need to get through the dungeons, because the trash monsters aren't going to keep us from getting through the dungeons generally. You're going to be able to run through as a group and just AoE clear them, gather them all up, and in order to gather them all up, you'll have to run around a lot. So Sprint is going to be an excellent buff for that. Second thing is, how fast can we clear through single target content? So bosses generally, because bosses are going to be the other bottleneck to progressing through these dungeons and just general PvE content quickly when we're leveling up. Well, Demoralize giving us a party damage buff is going to massively increase our entire squad's damage in those boss fights, because it'll be a temporary buff, but generally that'll be good enough to boost your party's damage for the boss fight. So absolutely, we're looking for those massive single-use, generally PvE skills that we're going to be using for single target damage fights. And then we're going to be looking for movement speed to make sure we can run through the trash monsters quickly and then knock them all out with some solid AoE. So solid AoE is the sort of the third criteria that I'm looking for when we're talking about running through the dungeons. So Whirlwind is another skill here from the Barbarian. That's going to be an absolutely amazing skill for just clearing out all the trash. Run through the dungeon, clear all the trash with Whirlwind, and then pop the AoE damage buff for the boss fight. It's excellent skill combination for the Barbarian, which is why he's at a 9. The second one is the Crusader, and the Crusader is also at a 9 here, and these ones are kind of a step down from the other kind of classes here, or rather the damage dealing classes, because they are providing the support. And so I felt like that they probably should be at a 9 over the damage dealer classes. One of the reasons why the Crusader is going to be so strong, and honestly this is the main reason, well, I guess there's two reasons. First off, we're going to have a massive speed bonus in the Draw and Quarter Horse ability that allows us to scout through the dungeons and trigger some events that may have been kind of longer to trigger if you were using just normal classes. This will give the Crusader a nice bonus for the entire party. Make sure you're leading the group. Very excellent skill there. Honestly, though, this Holy Banner right here is the absolute way to go in terms of knocking down those single target areas. Giving your whole team a crit chance bonus of 100%. I've mentioned this skill quite a few times at this point, but this will knock down those single target boss encounters very quickly, allowing you to just speed through any of the bosses, any of the PvE content, where it's going to be normally quick or difficult to get through. Pop this down, all your team's going to be massively increasing their damage output. You'll be able to burst it through and then continue on to the next area. Not only that, but the Crusader also has the Consecration, an AoE buff there. The Conjuration of Light, which could be another AoE damage skill. I'm sorry, the Consecration was an AoE damage skill. Conjuration of Light can be an AoE damage skill. and just a bunch of other AoE damage skills that will just clear through trash very quickly, as well as the spinning shield, which will do massive single target damage as well, which is surprising considering the Crusader's mainly here for the support that it's offering. Next up is going to be the Demon Hunter, and the Demon Hunter I think is absolutely an absolute 10 for progressing through the just general game 1 through 60. Now, one of the downsides to the Demon Hunter is that some of the skills and some of the areas, you might be a little squishy, but if you're playing in a group with a Crusader, with a Barbarian, you jump into a single target boss fight, they pop the Demoralize, they pop the Banner, now you have increased damage, as well as max crit rate, which will turn into a bunch of more crit damage, and then you're going to be just completely shooting out the boss because your melee characters will kind of create a defensive wall for you. So you'll just be able to basically stand there and pop all your massive abilities here with like a multi-shot, just clearing through the waves as we get through, getting to the boss, and then popping the sentries, popping the vengeance, and then just going to town on those single target encounters. Demon Hunter is going to be absolutely massive. Honestly, I think Demon Hunter is just an amazing step above the other classes out there, along with honestly one other one I think could be very, very good for leveling. But this Demon Hunter, you can run 2 of them, clear out those boss encounters, and then just have them, because you can run through the entire stage while shooting, you can just clear out content while you're moving forward, which is really, really nice and absolutely amazing for the Demon Hunter. Next up is going to be the Necromancer here, and the Necromancer is going to be an absolute 10 as well. And there's really 2 reasons for that. One, the primary attack is actually an AoE. So you have constant AoEs popping out and just smacking all the enemies. But mainly it's going to be for the command skeletons and the command skeleton mage and the command golem. The summons will just continuously take out the side adds, as well as you being able to actually move on while your adds take care of some of the damage previously, or some of the adds previously, like the skeleton mage, which will stand in place just shooting soulfire in a direction, just taking out those adds while you're walking through the dungeons. And then the actual summons, especially these skeletons here, pop this ability, target the boss, and the skeletons will absolutely do massive, massive damage to those single targets. So the Necro is absolutely amazing for leveling, especially considering that they have so much damage built in the kit. If you're prioritizing that, they also have a lot of support, but if you're talking about speed and leveling as fast as possible, we're talking about skills that give us more damage, not more survivability, because we don't care about that. We're just trying to speed through content as fast as possible, because we're going to be surviving through skill. Next up is going to be the Monk, and Monk has dropped down a little bit here to about, I believe, a 6 is what we put him at. Yeah, we put him at actually a 7, and I think that's actually probably more correct than a 6. And the reason for that is we have actually some really, really solid AoE skills in terms of the Exploding Palm, as well as the 7-sided strike. And they have some solid grouping abilities with the Mystic Strike, the Dash, allowing them to speed through the content. This is another step down from the Crusader, the Barbarian. If we're talking about support skills, they are nowhere near close to the Barbarian and Crusader in terms of actually speeding through content, which is a little unfortunate. And that's one of the reasons why we put them a step down, because their damage doesn't compare to the damage dealers we're talking about, and their support doesn't compare to the support characters we're talking about. However, if you're going to go ahead and go with the Monk, which is absolutely viable, then you're going to have a lot of AoE in terms of 7-sided strike, the Exploding Palm, and then you actually have some very solid single target damage in terms of Mystic Allies. This is basically the single skill that makes Monk very viable for boss fights. Summon your allies, smack the boss, and just deal massive damage on a single target. Very, very good for boss fights. Bringing in the extra AoE will help you clear out those waves, but other than that, it's not huge, because there's going to be plenty of AoE between your entire party for sure. Last one up is going to be the Wizard, and the Wizard is at a 6, and again, another step down from the Monk, because your movement ability here in this case is going to be the Teleport, which will be solid, but you are going to have limited charges for that, so it's not going to be a consistent group buff either, because if your whole party can't run through the dungeon fast, then it's really no point in using your movement ability unless you're getting something else out of it, like the Crusader, who's going to be scouting ahead. So that's a completely different scenario. So the Teleport doesn't really give you all that much. You're going to have the Black Hole, which will allow you to pull enemies in, and you're going to have the Meteor, as well as some of the channeling skills up here, like Disintegrate. Things like that will allow you to kill through bosses quickly, as well as dealing a ton of damage to the adds around. The problem I have with the Wizard is that if you're going to run a Wizard, just run the Demon Hunter, because they're just going to be so much better at dealing single target damage than the Wizard here. as well as you don't need the extra AoE damage. The thing that makes the Necromancer different is that you're going to have constant AoE damage on the basic, as well as the summons, which provides another entity for the basically the monsters to get stuck on and start attacking. So that's why the Necromancer is a step way above than this class. But if you're running the Wizard, why not just run the Demon Hunter in terms of talking about efficient power leveling, not in terms of like, okay, I want to diversify my party and things like that. That's a completely different conversation. We're talking about speed. We don't want to sit there and set up our abilities. We want to run through it and just smack people with massive damage, and the Demon Hunter just takes the cake for that. So while I do think the Wizard is going to be absolutely viable with the Meteor as well as those channeling skills, they're just not quite as good as the other ones, and that's really what this is all about. So that is going to be the ending of the list here. Let me know what you all think about our ranks in the description down below. Honestly, the Wizard and Monk generally would be a step down across all areas of the board. It's one of the reasons why Wizard and Monk are kind of rated the least popular / least viable, even though all of them are viable. And of course, the Demon Hunter and the Crusader and Barb should be self-explanatory in a lot of situations. Pretty much you can pair the Barb and Satyr in any group composition, and the Barb and Satyr will always grant you value because of the group buffs that you're getting. So that'll be it for this video, and I'll see you for the next one.